It used to be a little bit different, and you look back to the 1930s, actually, where the United States radio system would host town hall meetings with live discussion and live audience. Let me play a clip that we found of one little bit of audio track from 1935, a discussion about can labor promote recovery. We could be having this conversation today. Take a listen.
In our joint discussions on the problems facing our country today, it is not the purpose of the participants to win an oratorical contest, and there will be no appeal to class prejudice. The speakers who are with us tonight, and all who are invited to appear on this program, are sincerely interested in the welfare of the whole American people. They are interested in truth and are trying earnestly to find a workable solution to the many perplexing problems before us. This is no academic discussion. We are dealing with immediate problems that vitally affect your welfare and mine. While there may be wide differences of opinion on the subjects before us, we're going to tackle them in the American way, through free speech and an honest and fearless interchange of opinion in open meetings. This evening we're going to discuss
Andrea, to
the
you,
labor
this is
situation.
beautiful stuff. How did you come up? How did you find it to begin? And do you see any reflection of that spirit alive today?
Well, I certainly think it's alive today. I mean, here, you know. What I write about in the book is contrasting that with, for example, you know, my experience on Lou Dobbs, which is supposedly another kind of media facilitated conversation about public issues where the question is not relevant. You know, Lou Dobbs has an answer, and then he offers you the answer, and he puts a question mark at the end, and then you either agree or disagree. But the focus, the goal of the conversation is not greater understanding of the issues. And, you know, in this show, America's Town Hall on the Air, the host would actually give a prize to the audience member who came up with the best question.
Right.
And people would pride themselves. People would form clubs and listen to the show together in their homes and talk about the issues, and they would pride themselves on changing their mind. Isn't that complete? I mean, that's wild to think about. They would pride themselves on how and when they change their mind. And I don't see that represented in the way our media, again, heavily consolidated and corporate, thinks about their role and responsibility in facilitating conversations and helping people to ask questions.
You said that power and inquiry are connected. I think you said. How? Talk about it.
Well, I think there's no more powerful expression than asking a question. And, of course, that doesn't mean that it's going to be answered. But you know, in my life, you asked me how I started to think about questions. You know, when I was 16 and started in politics and sat on the New York City Board of Education when there was one as the student member, I realized that if I asked questions of either students or put students in the position where I would bring high school newspaper editors to grill in press conferences the officials of the Board of Ed, and there was nothing more both frightening and, of course, exciting, which is obvious to you, your business is asking questions, but seeing this, then asking questions. And it was different than making a statement. It actually was more threatening, but also more potentially powerful to ask a question. And that's obviously the work that I've done and the work the Drum Major Institute does. But I don't know, maybe it's, again, oversimplifying in the midst of all of these pressing policy debates. But I do think we need to look back and think about the spaces like, for example, civics education, which I spend a lot of time on in the book, and making sure that those public institutions are ones that encourage young people asking questions.
I've got to go to your decision to spend your time on leave, in part finishing the book and promoting the book, and in part going to work as a policy advisor for Michael Bloomberg. Talk about why you made that decision, and then I've got some questions, because on the face of it, Bloomberg doesn't seem a big question why kind of guy. Well,
I write in the book, in my chapter, by click or by click, the two different spellings about ideological segregation. And I cite some of Bill Bishop's work, who wrote The Big Sort.
Sameness.
Yeah, people who are kind of making their decisions where they live, where they relocate, based on based on whether people share their outview and their worldview rather. And then, of course, our decisions to consume media are. I mean, they've done tests on this where people will even prefer to read the sports from an outlet that with which they have ideological agreement. And then you can spend all day online and just learn about the world through the lens that you share. Right. And, you know, when I went back and I started and interviewed child practitioners, psychologists, you know, those folks, and I asked them, how do young people learn to question? When do they begin to inquire? And the answer is kind of simple: when you bump up against the unfamiliar. And again, that was both simple and profound to me, that, are we going to bump up against the unfamiliar if we are segregating ourselves by ideology? So, to me, that's important, because the question that I've always asked, and I know it's the question that you do as well, is how can we make the most change? And in my view, it was getting out of one environment in order to explore another that I think is an important one, being around the table, influencing the direction of policy. And to me, this is really a question for myself. Is this, how can progressives advance an agenda through, for example, local institutions and local power? And the answer for me was, let me go and learn.
So talk about, and then we'll come back to the essence of the book, but to talk about Bloomberg for just another second. I mean, here's a guy who for the last 7 years has controlled the education, public education in New York, in part through appointing both the school's chancellor and 8 out of 13 school board members, but also out of asserting tremendous amount of control through those ways. When there were 2 Hispanic board members who questioned his proposal to end social promotion, he had them fired and replaced with other people. On the face of it, that doesn't look like cultivating inquiry. What are you finding on the inside? If you've had differences with him, are you finding the inside is a place you can tussle with him?
Well, I think one indication of where the campaign is and where he is that I was asked to take this job. I mean, anyone who knows me a little bit knows what I'm about. And so I think to some extent that reflects on both their intention and their vision of the kinds of policies that you need going forward. I sat on the Board of Education as a high school student, and I have to tell you, it was dysfunction. Its dysfunctionality was apparent to me as a high school student, to the point where I definitely wouldn't want to even think about going back to a system like that. I mean, look, I think local politics is sometimes complicated. The lines aren't as clear, progressive, conservative. But to me, the way I define progressive is someone who believes that government can and must play a positive role in people's lives. And I think that's the mayor's view. And if you look at either, coming out, going to D.C. and coming out in favor of a public option, being one of the first sane voices, and I know you know this, years ago when the Republican Party was freaking out about immigration, being one of the sane voices saying we need legalization, we need a pathway to citizenship, doing so on the op-ed pages of the Wall Street Journal, whether it's, talking about poverty, climate change, I mean... Yeah,
but you don't need to defend Bloomberg. I just want to know what's the atmosphere inside. Are you able to raise these questions? Are you able to see discourse? And is there something that you're learning there that you didn't know already that's making it worth your while taking an insider seat that will make it more difficult probably for you to come back onto the outside?
Well, I think it depends on what happens out of the campaign. I think for the most part, everybody in my world has been very supportive of it, because I think there is an understanding that we need an inside-outside strategy. And I'm learning a lot. I'm learning about how local policy gets made in a way that I didn't quite understand. I'm learning about who the people are who are making that policy. And also, frankly, I'm learning a lot about what the left does well and doesn't do well.
How are we doing on questions?
I think we could be doing better when it comes to raising questions that lead to progressive policy responses on local levels. I think we're very good at asking these questions more broadly. We're very good at wish lists locally, but I don't know that we're as good in asking, what does a progressive New York City actually look like? And what are the policies that get there? So when I leave this, I think I'll both, A, hopefully have an impact on the policy, and I believe that I will, and I believe that's why I was hired, but also understand better how the outside movement needs to think about working with local government to pursue an agenda.
Andrea, I wish we had twice as much time. I've got many more questions about your book, as you can see, but we've run out of time. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
We'll have you back. We'll talk more. And we will have a discussion about the mayor's race per se. This wasn't that. This was something else. We hope that you understood different kinds of whys going on here. Andrea, thanks so much for coming in. The book is Why, The Death of Why, The Decline of Questioning, and the Future of Democracy. You can find out more about it at our website, GRITtv.org. Thanks.